All right, there is a new pope, and I was not planning to talk about this until this morning, and I do want to get one thing out of the way. I don't really cover papal elections or talk much about the Catholic Church. I'm certainly not a Catholic. I don't care who wears the big hat, for lack of a better term. I don't follow the Vatican like it's the Oscars. But there is a MAGA meltdown happening over the new pope that is a different story. It's sort of a tangential story. And it is.
The announcement of the first American pope has sent shockwaves through the MAGA community. With Cardinal Robert Prevost now leading the Catholic Church, the backlash from the far right is not just loud, it's a full-blown meltdown. Let's dive into the absurdity and reveal the manipulation behind their outrage.
Is utterly fascinating because it says so much about MAGA, and it undercuts the idea that religion is even important to them. It's, as with all of these principles, it's important to the extent that it's convenient. And because some in the MAGA space have now identified the new pope as maybe holding left-wing values, despite being a registered Republican by what we've been able to find, they are not pleased. So let's go through what happened. The Catholic Church has selected its first ever American pope. Cardinal Robert Prevost has been designated Pope Leo the 14th. Good for him. Prevost is a Chicago-born priest who believes in things like compassion and human dignity and not treating immigrants like disease vectors, much like the recently deceased Argentinian Pope, Pope Francis. And MAGA doesn't like this. MAGA had an absolute total meltdown.
This is a classic case of elite manipulation. The far right's reaction reveals their hypocrisy. They claim to uphold Christian values, yet they turn against a leader advocating compassion. It's a calculated move to redirect their followers' anger towards a figure who challenges their distorted version of faith.
And the moment that the white smoke rose from the little chimney, the right-wing fever swamp kicked immediately into overdrive. They started digging through Pope Leo's old tweets like he was applying for a job at PragerU, and they didn't like what they found. They found posts with sympathy for George Floyd. They found posts critical of the now Vice President J.D. Vance. They found posts that, brace yourself, sound suspiciously like actual Christian ethics, and they didn't like it. Now, before being selected, Stephen Bannon was on with Piers Morgan, and he said, I would be very worried if Robert Prevost ends up becoming Pope. Bannon warned about this.
There's never been an American-born Pope. Is this the moment?
I do think one of the dark horses, and I think, unfortunately, he's one of the most progressive, is Cardinal Prevost. I don't think he's getting enough play. He is certainly on the short list as being, and I think it's pretty shocking given how the contempt they hold the American church. The American church gives so much money, they're afraid it has too much power. So they've never really wanted to have an American pope. But my understanding is Prevost is one of the ones closest to Francis ideologically. He's also had tremendous experience in Latin America. And so he's one of the ones on the short list.
All right. So Bannon then goes on to list other possibilities, but Bannon was right. Prevost was indeed on the short list, and Prevost became Pope. And this is when the floodgates opened. Far-right conspiracy crank Laura Loomer, who seems to have a lot of influence over Donald Trump right now, went into full meltdown mode, calling him a woke Marxist.
Look at how they distort reality. By labeling the Pope as a woke Marxist, they're weaponizing language to incite fear. This is not about theology. It's about controlling the narrative. The elites want their followers to see anyone advocating for human dignity as a threat to their ideology.
Pope, and later went on with more ranting and said that it's gross that Prevost now, as Pope Leo the 14th, will be leading the Catholic Church. She called him anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, pro-open borders, and, quote, a Marxist like Pope Francis. Now, remember that Jesus preached wealth redistribution, but never mind that. Then in comes Newsmax's Rob Schmidt warning minutes before the election that this Pope better not be woke. Now, by MAGA standards, I guess the new Pope is woke, by which I mean that he believes immigrants are people. I know that that's not necessarily a popular view in the MAGA right at this point in time. Then came alt-right grifter Mike Cernovich, who was frothing at the mouth, raging that the new pope is an open borders globalist, and predicted without evidence that he will soon be pushing abortion. Not pro-choice policies, by the way, just pushing abortion like a door-to-door sales gig. Could I interest you in an abortion? Something I've still never seen anyone do, despite the ranting and raving from the anti-choice right. Joey Manarino is another far-right influencer. He went full panic mode. This guy is worse than Francis. And he even referred to him as a liberal piece of shit and said that we're effed. You can sense how deeply spiritual Manarino is. And then Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA kind of piped in to say the Pope was spreading George Floyd propaganda. But ultimately, Kirk did say, listen, it seems that this guy is a registered Republican. And that's, I guess, good as far as Charlie Kirk is concerned. So Trump says he looks forward to meeting the new Pope. Should be a delightfully awkward meeting. But here's the big takeaway. The MAGA movement now treats everyone and everything as a potential sort of deep state enemy.
This is a powerful reminder of systemic manipulation. The MAGA crowd is conditioned to see dissent as betrayal. When the Pope advocates love and compassion, they label it Marxism. This tactic keeps their followers in line, fearing anyone who doesn't toe the party line, even a religious leader.
Even the Pope. And it's not over some major, theological disagreement, but because the Pope has shown some moral clarity on issues like immigration and police violence, and even the cruelty of Donald Trump's administration. This is the MAGA mind virus in action. The Pope says, love thy neighbor. They say, that's Marxism. The Pope says, don't vilify immigrants. Well, that's globalism and it's open borders. The Pope says George Floyd's death was a tragedy. They say that's woke propaganda. If he doesn't praise J.D. Vance, then he's betraying people. And what this is a reminder of is that just like with debt and deficit, just like with business regulation, just like with protectionism and isolationism, just like with support the police, support the troops, with every single one of these issues, the actual principles stop mattering once they become politically inconvenient, because it's all about loyalty to one guy. He happens to be orange. You know who I'm talking about. And if you don't worship him, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the literal Pope himself, and they would say you are a traitor. And in this case, the Pope is a traitor to what they describe as Christian values. And what's wild is that these are the people who were screaming about religious freedom for years, but now they want the Vatican to act like it's part of Turning Point USA or the Trump administration. Sorry, the Pope's job is not to make Trump feel better about himself. And if that bothers you, it probably says more about your religious and moral framework than it does about the Pope. So I anxiously await this meeting between Trump and the Pope. It sounds like it'll be really weird.
The MAGA meltdown over Pope Leo XIV is not merely a reaction, it's a strategic effort to maintain control over their narrative. It serves as a chilling reminder of how elite manipulation can twist faith into a tool of division. Remember, when morality becomes inconvenient, it's discarded. What do you think? Are they losing touch with true values? Share your thoughts below.